Most people will work for 40 years and never feel financially free. Not because they didn't try hard enough, not because they weren't smart enough, but because they spent their entire lives one step away from a threshold they never knew existed. There are exactly 3 moments in the wealth-building process where everything shifts. Where money stops being something you chase and starts being something that chases you. Where your effort multiplies instead of just adding up. Most people walk right past all 3 of them. Some people stumble through one by accident. A rare few understand all 3. And those are the people you watch from a distance and wonder, how did they do that so fast? This video is about those 3 moments. We're calling them tipping points. And by the time this is over, you're going to understand wealth mechanics at a level that most financial advisors never teach, most books never reach, and most people never discover until it's too late. We're going to talk about a number that changes everything, and it's not the number you think. We're going to talk about why the middle class is structurally prevented from reaching these tipping points, not by bad luck, but by design. And we're going to reveal the hidden psychology that keeps intelligent, hardworking people stuck at 0 momentum for decades. Stay with this, because the 3rd tipping point is the one that will genuinely disturb you. Before we get into the tipping points themselves, we need to understand something fundamental about how wealth actually works, because almost everything you've been taught about money is framed incorrectly. You've been taught that wealth is about income. Earn more, save more, spend less. That's the formula everyone gets. And it's not wrong. It's just catastrophically incomplete. It's like being taught that flying is about jumping higher. Technically related. Practically useless beyond a certain point. Real wealth, the kind that compounds, the kind that creates freedom, the kind that eventually moves without you pushing it. That kind of wealth is not about income. It's about momentum. And momentum? In finance works exactly like momentum in physics. It's nothing, nothing, nothing. And then suddenly, it's everything. The problem is that the nothing phase can last so long that most people quit before the momentum begins. Here's what nobody explains. The graph of wealth accumulation is not a straight line. It's not even a gradual curve. It's almost completely flat for an extended period, sometimes years, sometimes decades, and then it bends, sharply, violently, almost incomprehensibly fast. That bend, that inflection, doesn't happen randomly. It happens at specific, identifiable, reproducible tipping points, and the people who understand where those points are can engineer their path toward them. Everyone else is just hoping to stumble into them. Now, to understand why these tipping points exist, we need to go back to something that was discovered, not by a financial genius, but by a mathematician studying population growth in the 19th century. His name was Pierre-François Verhulst, and he was trying to model how populations expand over time. What he found was that growth doesn't happen linearly. It happens in an S-curve. Slow at first, then explosive, then stable. The explosive middle section. That's where the tipping point lives. What Verhulst discovered about populations, compound interest discovered about money about 200 years earlier. And Albert Einstein, whether or not he actually said it, was credited with calling compound interest the 8th wonder of the world. Not because it sounds impressive in a quote, but because if you actually sit down and model it over time, the numbers become genuinely hard to believe. Here's a simple example that most people have heard, but almost nobody has truly internalized. If you invest $10,000 at a 7% annual return, after 10 years you have roughly $19,000. Fine. After 20 years, $38,000. Still just multiplication. After 30 years, $76,000. Interesting. After 40 years, $149,000. Almost 15 times your original investment. That's the shape of compound growth. But notice something. The first 20 years produced $28,000 in growth. The last 20 years produced $111,000. The same 20-year period, the same 7%. But 11 times more wealth created because of where you were on the curve. That's not magic. That's mathematics. And the people who understand that shape, who understand that the back half of the curve is worth more than everything that came before it, those people make different decisions. They stay patient when others give up. They stay invested when others panic. They understand that their current position on the flat part of the curve is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of proximity to the bend, but compound interest is just the foundation. The 3 tipping points we're about to discuss go much deeper than compound interest. They're about something more psychological, more structural, more invisible. And the first one will probably surprise you. The first tipping point has a name inside certain circles of high net worth individuals and serious investors. They call it the escape velocity number, and what it refers to is the specific asset level at which your investment returns exceed your annual expenses, not your income, your expenses. The moment your portfolio generates more per year than you spend per year. That is the first tipping point. That is the moment wealth begins to build itself. For most people in the United States, based on median household spending data, that number sits somewhere between $600,000 and $1.2 million. Let's use the middle, approximately $800,000. At a conservative 4% withdrawal rate, the famous number from the Trinity study, the foundation of most modern retirement math, $800,000. Generates $32,000 per year. For someone whose annual expenses are $30,000, that's the line. Cross it, and you're free. Your money is now doing the work. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. Most financial advice is optimized to get you to retirement, not to escape velocity. Retirement at 65 is not the same as escape velocity at 40, not even close. Retirement is a time-dependent milestone. Escape velocity is a number-dependent milestone. And when you optimize for a number instead of a date, your entire strategy changes. People who understand the escape velocity number stop asking, how much should I be saving for retirement? And start asking, what is the fastest path to $800,000 in productive assets? Those are completely different questions. They lead to completely different decisions, different assets, different timelines, different sacrifices, and here is the cruelest part of the first tipping point. The escape velocity number is not far from where many middle-class people end up. Eventually. The problem is timing. If you cross that threshold at 62, after 40 years of work, you've technically reached escape velocity. But you've spent the best decades of your life before the momentum kicked in. The goal isn't just to reach the number. The goal is to reach it while you still have time to feel what freedom actually means. This is why the first tipping point destroys so many people psychologically. They're close, tantalizingly close, but they don't know they're close because nobody told them what number they were chasing. They were told to save 15% of income. They were told to max out their 401k. They were told to diversify. All technically correct, all strategically incomplete, because none of that advice tells you the specific number that changes everything. None of it says, here is your finish line, and here is exactly how far away you are from it. Once you see the escape velocity number for what it is, not a retirement fantasy, but a mathematical threshold, something shifts in how you make decisions. Every unnecessary purchase becomes a delay. Every income increase becomes an acceleration. Every investment decision becomes a calculation about how quickly it moves the number. The entire game changes because the goal finally has a shape. But this is where everything changes. If you're finding this useful, do yourself one favor before we continue. Subscribe to FinTrove, because what comes next is the part most finance channels never touch. And you're going to want the rest of this series. The second tipping point is more dangerous than the first. Not because it's harder to reach, but because it's the easiest to destroy. It has no widely known name, so we're going to call it the income inversion point. This is the moment when your passive income, income from assets, investments, business, systems, royalties, anything that doesn't require your direct hourly labor, exceeds your active income from employment. The moment that happens, you have crossed a threshold that most people never cross in their lifetime. Here's why this tipping point is the most powerful of the three. When your passive income exceeds your active income, you no longer need a job. To maintain your lifestyle, you may choose to keep working. Many wealthy people do. But you're no longer financially compelled to. That distinction between choosing to work and needing to work is one of the most profound psychological and practical shifts a human being can experience. It rewires your relationship with time. It rewires your relationship with risk. It rewires your relationship with opportunity. When you need a job, every decision is filtered through the question, can I afford to lose this income? That filter, silent, invisible, constant, shapes almost every choice you make. The career risk you don't take, the business idea you don't pursue, the negotiation you concede, the bad situation you stay in. All of it runs through that filter. Once passive income exceeds active income, that filter disappears. And suddenly your decision-making changes in ways that are almost impossible to describe to someone who hasn't experienced it. But let's talk about the math of getting there, because this is where most people make a catastrophic error. The conventional wisdom is to build passive income gradually alongside employment. Invest a little, build a side income, eventually it adds up. And that's fine. That works. Slowly. The problem is that this approach treats passive income as an addition to your financial life rather than a replacement for it. The people who reach the income inversion point fastest are the ones who make it the explicit primary goal of their financial life for a defined period, not just a background process running alongside everything else. Think about what that actually means. In practice, if your employment income is $80,000 per year and you want passive income to exceed it, you need assets generating $80,000 annually. At a conservative 5% yield, that requires $1.6 million in income-producing assets. That sounds enormous. But at a more aggressive yield, real estate, dividend growth portfolios, business equity, the number can look very different. And the key insight is this. Once you know the exact number, you can reverse engineer the path. Most people never calculate their income inversion number. They think about retirement someday, about eventually having enough, about hoping the investments work out. The people who cross the second tipping point define a specific number, assign a specific deadline, and build every financial decision around getting there. That specificity is not just motivating. It's mathematically optimizing because it changes how you allocate capital, how you think about risk, how you choose between income streams. Now here is the dark side of the second tipping point, and this is the part that very few people talk about honestly. The income inversion point is the most vulnerable threshold. It's the one most people fall back from after briefly crossing. And the reason is psychology, not math. When passive income approaches active income, something strange happens to most people. They increase their lifestyle expenses, unconsciously, automatically, almost inevitably. They've been building discipline and restraint during the accumulation phase. Now money is starting to feel like it's arriving on its own. The pressure releases slightly, and the spending creeps up. A nicer car, a bigger apartment, a few more subscriptions. A few more nights out, none of it catastrophic individually, all of it devastating collectively because it raises the income inversion threshold just as you were approaching it. This is called lifestyle inflation, and you've heard of it. But what you probably haven't heard is that it operates most powerfully at the exact moment when it's most dangerous, when you're close to the tipping point, not when you're broke and cautious, when you're almost free and careless. The people who actually cross the income inversion point and stay above it are the ones who understand this mechanism before they encounter it. They make a decision in advance. When passive income starts rising, Expenses stay locked, not permanently, not as a lifestyle of deprivation, but for long enough to cross the line and stay across it. Because once you're truly above it, once passive income comfortably exceeds active income with a real margin of safety, you can let expenses grow. You can enjoy the results. But you have to get across the line first. There is a reason why. Stories about lottery winners losing everything within 5 years are so common. It isn't bad luck. It isn't foolishness, necessarily. It's that they were given a sudden large number without ever going through the process of understanding the tipping points. They hit wealth without ever building the framework to sustain it. The money came without the knowledge. And knowledge, it turns out, is what keeps wealth from evaporating. This brings us to the third tipping point. And I want to say clearly, this one is different in kind, not just degree. The first two tipping points are about numbers. This one is about something harder to measure and far more powerful. The third tipping point is what we're going to call the network leverage threshold. And explaining it properly requires us to go somewhere most financial content never goes. Into the actual mechanics of how serious generational wealth is built. There is a reason why certain families maintain wealth across generations, while others, even after reaching financial freedom, see that wealth dilute and disappear within 2 or 3 generations. There is a reason why certain entrepreneurs seem to build companies faster with each successive venture, while others struggle just as hard every single time. There is a reason why certain investors get access to deals, information, and opportunities that the general public never even hears about. That reason is not luck. It is not intelligence. It is not even talent. It is network leverage. And it operates at a level that most people don't even know exists until they're inside it. Here's what network leverage actually means. At a certain level of wealth and credibility, your network begins generating returns on your behalf without you doing the work. Opportunities come to you rather than requiring you to chase them. Information flows to you before it reaches the market. Capital becomes available to you at terms that aren't available to the general public. And most importantly, the other people in your network begin creating value for you through their own activity, their own relationships, their own expertise, in ways that compound just like financial capital compounds. This is the mechanism behind the widely observed but poorly understood phenomenon that the wealthy keep getting wealthier even when they do very little actively. It's not just that their money is invested better. It's that their network is a second engine of wealth creation operating in parallel, one that most people never build and never access. Let's get specific, because this can sound abstract until you see the numbers. A study by Harvard economists examining venture capital returns found that among the top-performing venture capital firms, a significant portion of their outperformance was attributable not to analytical skill, but to deal flow, meaning which opportunities they even had access to consider. The best deals in private markets rarely reach open platforms. They circulate through networks. The firms and individuals inside those networks get the first call. Everyone else gets the remainder or nothing. This is not unique to venture capital. It applies to real estate. The best off-market deals go to people with relationships with sellers, not to people browsing listing platforms. It applies to business acquisition. Companies with strong strategic networks get approached for partnerships and acquisitions before anyone else hears about them. It applies to employment at the highest levels. The most transformative career opportunities circulate through networks, not job boards. What this means practically is that the third tipping point, the network leverage threshold, is the moment when your network begins generating deal flow, information, and capital access at a rate that your own direct effort never could. It's the moment when being in certain rooms makes you more money than working in any office. But here's the uncomfortable truth embedded in the third tipping point. It cannot be purchased. It cannot be accelerated purely through money. It has to be built through a process that most wealth-focused people deprioritize because it feels indirect and slow and sometimes uncomfortable. The process is value-first relationship building at the highest levels of whatever field you're in. The people who reach the network leverage threshold are not the ones who collected the most business cards or attended the most networking events. They're the ones who built a reputation for creating value for others over an extended period, who helped before they needed help, who shared knowledge before they needed knowledge, who made introductions before they needed introductions. Over time, that pattern of behavior builds what economists call social capital. And social capital, once it reaches a critical mass, starts behaving just like financial capital. It starts compounding. The evidence for this is everywhere if you know how to look. Warren Buffett's returns don't come purely from stock analysis. They come partly from his network, which gives him access to deals. Insurance companies, Berkshire subsidiaries, private transactions that no one else could access on the same terms. Elon Musk's ability to raise billions for multiple ventures simultaneously is not purely a function of his track record. It's a function of his network of investors, engineers, and operators who've worked with him before and will back him again. These aren't accidents. They're the visible results of the third tipping point. Now, here's the part that will genuinely challenge you, because everything we've discussed so far has a hidden connector, a single thread that runs through all 3 tipping points and explains why most people miss all of them. That thread is time horizon. Not time in the abstract sense, not patience as a personality trait, but time horizon as a structural decision about how far into the future you're optimizing. Research by behavioral economists, including work done by Daniel Kahneman and subsequent researchers, has consistently shown that human beings are biologically wired to overvalue the present relative to the future. This is called hyperbolic discounting, and it is one of the most powerful forces in behavioral psychology. It's the reason $1 today feels worth more than $1 tomorrow, even when rationally they're equal. The wealth-building process, structured around these 3 tipping points, is essentially a multi-decade exercise in overriding hyperbolic discounting. Every single decision that moves you toward escape velocity requires you to prefer a future state over a present one. Every decision that maintains the income inversion point requires you to delay lifestyle gratification. Every investment in network leverage is a long game play that pays off years from now, not next month. This is why most people miss all 3 tipping points. Not because they don't understand them intellectually, but because the decision architecture of their daily life is set up to prioritize the short term at every step. The culture they're immersed in is optimized for present consumption. The marketing they encounter is engineered to extract immediate spending. The social comparison mechanisms they're exposed to push toward visible immediate status signals, car, home, vacation, rather than invisible long-term asset accumulation. They are not failing through stupidity. They are failing because the entire environment is structured against these 3 tipping points. And understanding that is actually one of the most empowering realizations possible. Because once you see the environmental architecture clearly, you can build a counter-architecture. You can make choices that systematically override the default pull toward the short term. Let me make this tactical, because this is where we close the loop. If you understand the first tipping point, escape velocity, your immediate action is to calculate your number. Not an approximate goal, your actual escape velocity number. Take your monthly expenses, annualize them, then divide by your expected sustainable withdrawal rate. If you're conservative, use 3.5%. If you're moderate, use 4%. That quotient is your target. Write it down, look at it. Build everything around closing the distance to that number as quickly as possible. If you understand the second tipping point, the income inversion point, your immediate action is to calculate your current passive to active income ratio. If passive income is 0, your ratio is 0. If it's $5,000 a year and your salary is $60,000, it's 8%. Your goal is to get that ratio above 100%. Every financial decision you make from now on should be evaluated partly on whether it improves or degrades that ratio. That framing, ratio-based thinking instead of amount-based thinking, changes the nature of every choice. If you understand the third tipping point, the network leverage threshold, your immediate action is an audit of your current network, not your LinkedIn connections, the people whose phone calls you actually take and who take yours. Ask, is my network currently above or below my ambitions? Am I spending time with people who are ahead of where I want to be? Am I creating value for people who could create enormous value for me? Network leverage doesn't start on the day you need it. It starts years before, in rooms you choose to be in right now. And here is the thread that ties everything together. The thing that hits differently when you see it clearly. The 3 tipping points are not separate goals. They are sequential stages in a single process. The first creates freedom from financial pressure. The second creates freedom from time for money, exchange. The third creates access to a level of opportunity that most people never even see. Each one builds the foundation for the next, and none of them happen by accident, by luck, or by simply working hard for long enough. They happen when someone looks at the map clearly, identifies where the inflection points are, and builds a life oriented deliberately around reaching them. Not someday, not eventually, not after everything else is figured out, but now specifically with a plan that has actual numbers and actual milestones attached to it. Think back to where we started. The image of someone working for 40 years and never feeling free. That isn't a story about insufficient effort. That's the story of someone who ran hard in a direction but never had a map, who saved diligently without a target, who built income without building assets, who made friends without building a network. The difference between that person and the person who finds financial freedom before 50, who retires not at 65, but at will, who has access to opportunities most people never hear about. The difference is not intelligence. It's not luck. It's not even discipline, really. It's knowing where the tipping points are and building every day toward them. That's the map. Now you have it. If this gave you a genuinely different way of thinking about wealth, not just motivation, but actual structural clarity, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to go deeper into the specific strategies, the exact numbers, and the psychological frameworks that separate wealth builders from wealth hopers, subscribe to FinTrove, because this is just the beginning.